Let's talk. Welcome into another edition of Tailgate Talks, where we sit on a tailgate and, well, talk. I'm joined today by a special guest. Will, would you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, how you got into farming.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Will Anderson. I'm from right here, Neville's community. Started farming roughly 25 years ago. I always wanted to do it. I always, kind of followed Daddy everywhere he went.
We're here on the southern end of Bullock County down in South Georgia. Tell us a little bit about your operation. I see some cotton here. We got chicken houses behind us. Tell us a little bit about what you grow, what you produce here.
Yeah, we farm cotton, peanuts, and corn. Got 8 broiler houses with collection poultry.
What size farm are we talking about here? How many acres? Roughly.
We roughly farm 4,000 acres of cotton and peanuts and corn.
Okay.
And it's scattered Bullock, Evans, Bryan, a little bit in Tattnall County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, who all is involved? I can't imagine you by yourself being able to tend to all that. Who else is involved in the operation
we've
here?
got 6 full-time employees, and that's including, of course, that's me and my brother. We pretty much make the decisions. And then my son graduated high school last year, or in 24. And he's been a humongous asset. He could run equipment when he was 10. And then we've got 3 more full-time guys. And then we've got 3 or 4 part-time guys. We pick up high school or college kids for harvest season.
If I use the term farming is a business, what does that mean to you?
It's definitely a business, and you better treat it like a business. But it's more than that. I mean, it's something that you have to love to do. I mean, it's literally we put in 70 to 80 hours a week, most every week, and it's always something changing. The dynamics are always moving, and I think you just have to love it. But the business side is very important if you want to stay in business.
Well, I doubt you wake up one morning and say, you know what, I think this is what we're going to do this growing season. What kind of budgeting or planning goes into a typical production season for you?
In this area, you don't have a whole lot of options. I mean, you've got, irrigation, you kind of put your most profitable crop under it, which right now would be peanuts. Corn looks a little better. Cotton certainly isn't it, but you also have a rotation issue that you have to deal with. And also, you buy equipment. You can't have $2 million worth of cotton pickers and then buy $1 million combine. You got to have a plan. The problem with, the business side of it, you can't, there's nothing we can do about the prices. And there's really nothing you can do about the inputs either.
And that's what I was thinking. You have the best laid plan. As we're experiencing right now, commodity prices are in the tank. Input costs are rising. Mm-hmm. How do you control that throughout the year? You had a plan, and then the plan gets derailed by some of that. How do you continue to operate with those factors?
Well, you can. A lot of stuff, if you want to upgrade equipment, you just have to put it off. There's really nothing we can do about payroll anymore either. It's gotten pretty expensive, to keep full-time help. We have crop insurance that helps.
Let's talk crop insurance for a minute. What makes you decide to use AgSouth for crop insurance?
Andrea Whitfield is my insurance lady, and she's extremely knowledgeable, and she works a lot too, and she is definitely for the farmer. She is, I can call her, 7 days a week if I need to, and she's really up to date on all the new, crop insurance changes a lot.
Sure.
And you almost have to be an agent yourself to understand it, but I've been with her long enough that I'm comfortable with her knowledge that it's easy to make decisions with her.
So if there was somebody watching this that maybe he's just starting out, doesn't understand crop insurance or doesn't understand the importance of it. You've touched on this, that it's almost essential to have when you're running the risk of growing crops.
I don't see how you can't farm without it.
How does financial planning play into your decision making as a farmer?
Oh, it's vital, I think. I mean, you have to, put the numbers in there, but even when you do that, you look at your inputs and your expenses but you do the best you can and you're as conservative as you can be.
I've heard it said that farmers are the ultimate optimists. You have to be to take all this expense, put it in the ground, and just hope that your crop comes up. How do you balance that optimism that you have to have with being realistic about where prices are now for both the commodities and the input costs?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to have hope that, and I hate to say every farmer hates this term, I guess, but without government assistance, I don't think this thing's going to work out in the next couple of years if the prices don't go up.
Right.
And then if you're, real about it, you have to look at, what kind of, what do you have that you can, cut costs. The problem now, we've already lost our equity in equipment. When prices, when farming fluctuates, it happens quickly.
Right.
Like within 6 months. So our equipment equity, and besides the cotton picker, I'm in pretty good shape with the equipment. We've had some good deals and been able to pay cash for some and pay some down. But your next equity is if you've been fortunate enough to buy land.
Right.
And I think then you have to look at that. That's your next step. And just hopefully, the land equity holds up, for borrowing power, basically.
Right.
And then, what no farmer wants to say, your next step is to sell land.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's your pride and joy that you've worked hard for, and that's not ideal, I wouldn't think.
Can't do it.
Right.
I mean, not right. I'm not saying I won't do it. It's definitely there with some equity in it. But it's an option. But no, you don't. It's hard to, and that's what people don't understand as a farmer. That never really even enters into our mind. For any other business person or, investor, they do it when that return gets a certain amount. It's just like buying a stock for $1. When it gets to $10, you sell it.
Right.
But when you do that, first of all, like I told somebody the other day, you're not a farmer anymore.
True.
That's it. You didn't know it, but you retired.
As you look back on your farming career, as you've expanded and grown this farm, what factors go into the decision making that, hey, I think that piece of property over there or buying additional equipment, that might be something worth doing?
We did not start off, we started off pretty small. You start off by renting land, and then, it's all about relationships. It's slow. It's a slow process. You got to, get to know landowners. And when you rent land, you have to have so much land rented to be able to service debt on land that you buy.
Right. How do you decide, I think I want to try to buy this piece of land, this piece of equipment. I think that's worth doing versus, you know what, I might need to hang on to some of this extra cash that I've got and this extra cash flow to save for those tough years. What's the jumping off point to where you decide that it's worth doing?
It's a hard decision. I know I've always tried to be in some expansion mode all the time. Mm-hmm. You do have to look at your equipment and your labor, and it's like, if I pick up another 200 acres, do I need to buy another piece of equipment and hire another guy? And then you have to start putting the numbers with it. It's like, is it really worth doing that? But you do have to weigh it. Is it worth picking up additional acreage, when you have to add labor or equipment to it?
Well, has AgSouth been there for you during times where you've been in expansion mode?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been with AgSouth for, good gosh, my whole career, really. And they've always been supportive. It's always been pretty easy purchasing land and getting an operating note, to go again.
As you, through the years, you've diversified. You're not concentrated in just one crop or one output. How have you diversified, and how has that helped stabilize things?
Yeah, definitely. The chicken house has been just they've been great. It's just a stable, cash flow income, that you don't get out of farming all the time. And then, shifting more towards peanuts has definitely helped in the recent years. So it's definitely helped kind of being diversified doing that.
Yeah, I guess the fluctuations in one specific crop can sometimes be offset by those others.
Yeah. Well, the last couple of years, our, peanut crops, we've been blessed on this side of the state. We've had some pretty good yields the last couple of years, and they really offset the loss on the cotton.
Well, I know that one of the ways that you have diversified and expanded beyond just actual production is you are part owner of the Candler Peanut Buying Point.
Yeah, we had opportunity about, I think it's been 10 or 11 years ago. It's me and three other partners, Greg Sykes, Bo Patterson, and Ricky Neville, were able to buy the Peanut Buying Point in Metter. Then after that, we were able to buy the Peanut Buying Point right here in Neville's. They went out of business, and we were able to buy it, and then we rent another one and register.
Well, I of course know what a peanut buying point is, but for for my friends out here who don't, how about explaining exactly what a peanut buying point is?
Well, a buying point is basically we handle peanuts for the farmer, and
Okay.
and you have to we buy peanuts for Golden Peanut, and basically they can contract through us through Golden, and we handle all the paperwork, and then we get a commission to handle the peanuts.
Okay.
And so we bring the peanuts in, and we grade them, we dry them if they need it, we clean it if they're needed, and then we store them.
Okay.
And then we get paid to bring them in, to store them, to take them back out. And then we also build a sheller, so we shell seed, and then we sell the seed back to the farmer.
Okay.
To plant for the next year. And we try to provide we really good seed. We send the germ test off and make sure it's a good germ, and it's try to make sure the varieties are what producers are buying right now. And we've been pretty fortunate to it's all about tonnage and customer relationships.
If someone was watching today that was considering diversifying, is that something you would recommend?
Yeah, I definitely would. When you diversify, as farming gets bad, you read, different farm magazines and all, and it's like, you need to diversify, you need to make goat milk and cheese, and you need to plant, produce, and that doesn't work. I mean, that's a small, that's such a niche thing that it doesn't work for everybody. It can't work for everybody. So, I think at the core, you just need to, do what you are good at.
Well, it sounds like relationships are key in the whole farming environment. You got relationships with your input guys. You got relationships with other farmers around you. How has your relationship with AgSouth been through the years as you've financed? I'm assuming you financed land, equipment, all kind of different things through there.
Yeah, like I said, I've got an operating note I've had since 2000, I think. And I started Pat Calhoun was my original loan officer before he moved up the ladder to the Taj Mahal is what we call it over there.
Right.
And then I had Jason Lanier, local guy, kind of grew up with him, good operating guy. And then, and now I got Rodney Fowler, which I've had for, how long, Rodney? 18 years, long time. He actually I met him. He was a triangle salesman, chemical salesman. And, so we've been with him a long time, and I can get him whenever I want him on the phone, and been pretty good.
Well, and I know that, banks are banks, loans are loans, but what has been one of the keys that has kept you at AgSouth through the years there?
Simplicity of it. It's real easy dealing with somebody that knows your business, and there's not a big turnover. And like I said, I've had 3 loan officers in 25 years, and Rodney's been the one for the last 18. I know a lot of banks are good too, but you see a lot of banks being bought out, and kind of AgSouth has been, in the ag community the whole time. A lot of banks, when farming's good, you'll see loan officers you haven't seen in a long time kind of drive around and introduce herself, and they want your business when things are
in the
good
times.
In the good times, but I want somebody that wants it in the bad times.
Sure.
So.
And has AgSouth been able to help you through some of those bad times that you may have had in the last 25 years?
Yeah, they have. They have. Easy to work with, and their interest rates are very competitive, if not the best, I think, most of the time.
One of the key components of financing with AgSouth is the patronage that we return to our borrowers. How is that? How have you been able to use patronage in your operation? Yeah,
it's been huge. In the good times, I actually try to put it towards some type of savings account, and then in the bad times, we use it to run on. We put it back into operating. Put it back in QuickBooks and run on it. And use it, and it does add up. Honestly, it's a check you don't really think about. Then when you get it in the spring, it's
kind of gravy on top of
it. Yes. Like free money.
Yeah. Now, have you ever taken it and gone on a wild vacation with it or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. I have taken it, and like I said, we try to maybe pay off a personal debt with it, or put it in some type of savings or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, a minute ago you mentioned the operating line of credit. How do you use an operating line of credit?
Well, we pull out of it. I try to keep my account zeroed out pretty much weekly, to save on, of course, interest. But we use it for payroll, chemicals, fertilizer, seed, repairs and maintenance. Hopefully we have some cash that we roll in from the previous year.
Well, and I mean, with the crops that you produce, cotton, peanuts, it's not like you're getting weekly and monthly income from that. It mostly comes right at harvest or when you decide to sell the crop. So I guess that line provides you flexibility during the year when maybe you're waiting on that big cash flow at the end.
Right. Yeah. Basically everything we sell is within 3 months in the fall and maybe into January. So we definitely rely on that.
And so that is something AgSouth provides. So have you been able to take advantage of that product with AgSouth, and that's helped you through the years?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had an operating line for 25 years, and it's always, we've been able to pay it back for the most part every year and renew it and get another one. I don't know how you farm without it.
Well, if you were talking to somebody out there watching today who was younger, maybe not like your son who's been able to move into an existing operation, but if somebody was wanting to get into farming right now, what advice would you share with them?
There's easier ways to make a living. Would be my first advice. I mean, like I say, if you don't really and I've told my son that too. There are a lot easier ways to make a living and simpler lives to have. But if you really love it, I think you probably need to partner up with an older farmer that maybe doesn't have any kids that want to farm, and start there, and you need to get a taste of it first.
Right.
Need to get a taste of working all the time and not having a great return all the time, and learn how to get your knuckles busted, and you need to learn how to be a mechanic and a accountant and all those things.
Well, it's certainly not a 9-to-5 job, I would imagine.
No, it's not.
picking on the weekends, and when the weather's right, you got to take advantage of it.
I always say, if anybody wants to work for me, if you like fishing or hunting, you probably don't need to work for me, because when the fishing's good and the hunting's good and the weather's pretty, we're working. Yeah.
Well, I know that right now is not an ideal time to be in farming, but you're out here every day, still doing it, still grinding. What is it that motivates you to keep going, even when it's not an ideal time to be in farming?
We've always got a hope. We've seen times this bad before, and when it flips, and you can do pretty good. That's you kind of have to look back at luckily I've been doing it long enough now. I think I am mature enough to look back and see where it's been pretty bad and bleak, and then 2 years later, it's a whole nother ball game. So then right now, honestly, we're picking some pretty good crops, which is always, kind of keeps your spirits up when you're picking good crops,
Sure.
even though they're not worth anything. But it is fun to see the fruit of your labor, and it looks good. And my son told me, he said we're about done picking peanuts, or halfway done, and he said, I almost hate to see it go. He said, the crop was good. I said, yeah, you better appreciate the good crops that you have, because you don't always have them.